I'd like to show everyone some really useful software for phone phreaking. Now, a lot of the software is not exactly designed for phone phreaking, however, it's still really useful. The first on the list is Scanner Recorder, which is actually designed for amateur radio guys and people that are into radio scanners and stuff. Basically, what this program does is it starts recording to all the audio coming in from an input, it saves it to a file whenever it hears it. Now, the first thing on the list that you have to do is you have to tell it what file to save to and what format to put it in. So we'll put this in MPEG, 20 kilobit, whatever. And you have to set your squelch. The squelch is basically how loud the input has to be before it starts recording. So we'll make this an okay amount. You gotta fiddle with it a little bit, but you'll understand once you use the program. Now we'll hit record. Now, whenever there's audio that's loud enough, it'll actually display on the monitor like it is now, and whenever it goes quiet, it'll stop recording. So, very useful program, and this way you don't have to sit in front of a sound recorder and fiddling with recording settings, this, that, and the other thing. You just let this program run for however long you can, and it records everything that you're doing. So we're going to stop this, we're going to close the file so we can access it, and we're going to exit the program. From this point on, you just go and use whatever your favorite, MP3 player is to, or wave player to play back the file. This is CoolEdit 96 by Centrillium Software. It's a general sound recording and editing application. It can do some really useful editing features like amplification, echo, reverb, noise removal, a whole bunch of fun stuff. But the two things that really makes it stand out from everything else is its ability to record for as long as you have hard drive space and the ability to generate DTMF tones. And as all phone phreaks should know by now, the entire phone system runs around dual tone multi-frequency signals. Here's the DTMF generation panel. Let's say we want to dial 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is our tone time, how long each tone is going to last. The gap between each tone. This is how long to pause whenever it sees this character and the amplification of the signal. Now you can do DTMF, MF or CCIT-R1, also known as blue box, and custom. So right now we'll just generate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's say we wanted to generate a DTMF signal that was a red box quarter tone. Okay, so the tone time is 33 milliseconds. The break time is 33 milliseconds. No pause, no need for that. We need to make a custom tone so it has 2200 and 1700. And this is going to be mapped to key 1. So we need 5 pulses, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're going to OK it. And there you go. There's a red box quarter tone. Now, the only real drawback of this application is because it's so old and the company's out of business, the only way you can register this application is through illegitimate means. I'm no way condoning software piracy, but this is a really great piece of software, and there is absolutely no other way for you to register this software unless you go down that road. This is Switchboard. Switchboard has to be one of the best tone panel applications that I've ever seen for the entire Windows operating system. It is run on everything from Windows 95 all the way up to Windows XP Pro and Corporate. Basically, you push a button and it makes a sound. It's got your standard silver box DTMF tones. You got blue box tones. You got red box and green box, which really don't work anymore, and a TASI lock, which hopefully someday I'll get into. And it's even got a little phone book. What's really great about this application is all of these buttons have been mapped to your keyboard, so I can actually go and pound it on my keypad as fast as I can actually dial on a keypad. It's a really great application. If you just need a sound panel, this is the one to use. This is DTMF FFT by Howard Long. It's a free application, and it's designed to decode and process DTMF tones. He actually designed this to actually get the DTMF tones that are being transmitted by his amateur radio satellite in space, so he can understand what its inner workings are, like voltage level, temperature, antenna gain, all that jazz. We're going to use it to just decode plain old DTMF tones. So we're going to start the application. If you notice over here, the spectral equalizer is going ape shit. So that means you're actually got audio coming in. And this window over here is our DTMF codes that are actually being received. Everything else ignore. It's completely designed strictly for this gentleman's equipment. So I got my tone dialer. Let's go and spit in some DTMF tones, see how well this works. And there you go. This will actually also spit out to an Excel spreadsheet file, but I like the application. It's short, it's simple, it's free, it works, and it's very reliable. This is called TTY by DxSoft, and this is a Teletype application. Before I get into how to use the program, let me explain what Teletype is. Teletype is a type of service that's provided by the state and government so hearing impaired people can use the telephone system. Basically what happens is, let's just say that you wanted to go and talk to your friend on the internet. However, you can't get to the computer because you're busy doing something. So you have someone sit in your computer chair, and whatever is actually said to you on the instant messenger or IRC, whatever floats your boat, that person says to you, and whatever you say, your friend sitting at your computer chair types. That's kind of like what TTY is. Basically, you call into a relay operator, and a relay operator has a terminal sitting at his or her screen where a deaf person or a hearing impaired person will type. And the characters will come up on the screen, and the relay operator by law has to say everything that is typed. And that relay operator has to have everything said to him or her, and then type them on their terminal and send it to the hearing impaired person, which I have to admit, and oftentimes can become quite amusing. Now, this software is an audio-based TTY terminal for the Windows platform. Basically, you plug your speaker and microphone acoustically into your phone, which really all you need is a computer microphone and a pair of headphones. You put it up to your phone, you dial into a TTY number, and then you can make a call. So basically, what the program does is it turns text into tones. Now, it's not the fastest way of communicating, but it does have its uses, and it can be quite fun. Now, the thing about Call TTY is this is not freeware. You have to pay for it. So if you really just want to go and fiddle around with TTY services, you can also use your dial-up modem. So you really don't need to have an actual TTY program. They usually can use you can just use HyperTerminal or Minicom if you're under Linux, or whatever dial-in terminal software you have on your operating system. You do not need to have a TTY application. However, I like this because I put it on my laptop, and if I have to go and make an emergency call, or if I just need to call someone real quick and I don't have a quarter and my cell phone's dead, most TTY numbers are actually free. So I can call in and leave a message for my friend and use my computer as a terminal. Now, I'm in New York City, so there's actually a lot of TTY terminals that are actually underneath payphones. This is TTY Wavemaker by Cisco Unity. Basically what this application does is it turns text into a wave file of a TTY transmission. So this is a test, and we'll create our wave file. Okay, wave file is complete. Let's go to where we saved it to. Oop. And there you go. This is actually useful for something I call a blind dial, where basically you can call into the TTY service and you can't translate what they're saying to you. However, normally they're reading from a script. Hello, this is whatever state relay service operator number, whatever number to dial please, and you can make a pre-generated transmission. So let's say if I'm at the train station, underground, no cell phone service, and no quarter, I can just whip out my MP3 player, my CD player, whatever digital media player I might have on me at hand, have a pre-generated message to say, operator, please dial, one area code phone number, leave a message with Mustang, and tell him that Fox will be at the meetup location on time. It's You never know when you need something like that. It's always good to have on hand. This is TTY Wave Reader from Cisco Unity. It's a companion to the TTY Wave Writer, and, well, it does exactly what it says. It reads TTY files in WAV format, and it decodes them. So we'll go and take that test file that we did before, and read the WAV file. This is a test. There you go. For the unknown chance, an unlikelihood that you've ever come across a TTY transmission and intercept it, this would be the program to use. Or, if you just want to dick around and have some fun with TTY, and you want to generate your own transmissions, this is a great way to actually verify that your transmissions will work. CID Mage by Whirlwind Software is a caller ID message generator. Before we even get started, I want you to understand that there is absolutely no way that you can actually generate a caller ID audio transmission and have it display before someone picks up the phone. The only way to do this is if you are already in a call with someone. So this is not very useful to go and block your identity. This is only strictly for fun. Period. There are different forms of caller ID transmissions. You have your just simple phone number, you have phone number and name, and call waiting caller ID. So we entered a phone number, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. Name is Cock and Balls, and we play. And that is the audio data transmission of a caller ID transmission. You can also go to inspect and actually take a look at exactly what's being sent. The actual data going across things. You can also record caller ID transmissions and decode them. However, I don't have any, and I don't feel like generating one, so go get one. You can get one by just clicking this little save button down here. Really, I don't feel that like the $30 or $40 that they charge for this program really is worth it. It's a good fun thing to do. To tell you the truth, I can use CoolEdit to do the same thing and not have to pay the $40. But hey, that's what phone freaking's all about.
G'day, I'm Big Bro. In this segment, I'm going to talk about SSH tunneling. I'm going to show you how you can set up an SSH server on your home PC and tunnel to it remotely, encrypting all of your traffic and allowing you to get around content filters at school or work. Now this is our server, which is a Windows XP box. First, you'll need to get the OpenSSH server software. I'll put a link to that in our show notes. And just execute it and run through with all of the defaults. You don't need to add anything else. Now keep in mind, if you have a firewall, that you will have to allow this direct access to the internet. This box is a virtual machine that was just recently set up, and Windows Firewall didn't have any prompts to actually give it access. But once I turned it off, the connections worked fine. Now, once you've installed the OpenSSH server, you're going to have to perform a few configurations. First, go to Start, Run, and CMD. You want to navigate to the Program Files directory, then into the OpenSSH directory, and then into the bin directory. There's a few commands you have to run in here. I'll make a batch file for you, but for now, you can just type in mkgroup switchl ... /exec/group, then mkpassword/l, and that will output all of your user accounts and groups to those files for OpenSSH to use. Now you're going to have to go Start, Run, services.msc, and scroll down in the window until you find OpenSSH server. If the service isn't already started, restart it. Now that's the final part of the configuration for the server, and now you can move on to the client. Now, on the client machine, you're going to need the software PuTTY. There'll be a link to it in the show notes. Now, on your server, if it's at home, you might want to make sure that the port is forwarded. The default port is 22, and you'll have to set up the port forwarding in your router. Now we run the program PuTTY. In the host name box, type in the IP address of your server that you're connecting to, and then go down to the Tunnels tab, and in source port type 7070, click the dynamic box and click Add. That adds a tunnel between you and the server so that you can use the server IP address for all of your traffic. Then click Open. Keep in mind you're going to need a password protected account on the machine to log in. Now I'm logged in and it sends me to a command line. This is the first step of the tunnel. Now, to tunnel your internet traffic over the SSH server, you're going to need to set up a few configuration things. Since this is a virtual machine, I only have Internet Explorer installed, but this is applicable for most browsers. First, open the browser. Then, you're going to want to go to Tools and Internet Options. Go into the Connection tabs, and then into LAN Settings. Check the tick box Use a proxy server for your LAN, and then click on the Advanced box. The tunnel creates a stocks proxy, so you want to type in 127.0.0.1 and then 7070. This is telling Internet Explorer that you want to use the tunneled connection for all of your internet traffic. Then click OK. Click OK again, and then click OK after that. Now, you're going to be using the SSH tunnel to get to any website on the internet. This Google web page that I just downloaded didn't actually come from my laptop. It came all the way through the SSH tunnel, even though it's on the local machine. That's pretty much all you need to know to tunnel all your traffic through an SSH tunnel. Numerous other programs can be tunneled through SSH like IRC. The main thing you have to remember is to use a SOCKS proxy and set the port to 7070 and the IP address to your local machine. Well, I hope you enjoyed that segment. You can contact me at bigbro69@bsodtv.org, or for other contact details such as IRC or our forums, visit our website at www.bsodtv.org.
In this segment, I'm going to show you a very simple electronics project on how to interface console controllers into your PC. Now, when I mean console, it's mostly the older stuff: Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Genesis, Atari, TurboGrafx-16, PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, and Xbox. However, in this segment, I'm going to be using Super Nintendo because I love Super Nintendo controllers. They're small, they're easy to interface. Some of the tools that are going to be required are wire cutters, needle nose pliers, soldering iron, solder. I actually put a rubber band around a pair of large needle nose pliers to help as a second helping hand, because not everyone has someone to hold all the parts and components for them. The components that we're going to need is a 25-pin printer port connector. This one's actually used, so it's not in the best condition, but just bear with me. Small signal diodes. For Super Nintendo, we need 5. Some paper clips, straightened out, of course, and a hood, and some wire. The wire I've already stripped and pre-tinned because I'm pretty sure most of us don't find, stripping and tinning wire very fun. The first thing we're going to have to do is get our printer port all ready. So what we're going to do is we need to go and solder diodes into the appropriate places on the printer port. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to line all of these up and I'm going to trim them down. because we don't need wires or leads this long. Now, if you saw episode 2 of BSoD, you'll know that diodes are one-way gates for electricity, and you can't hook them up backwards. So the number one thing with this project, if you're having problems, make sure that your diodes aren't hooked up backwards. I mean, it's a common problem in such a simple schematic. Now, our schematic says that we have to put a diode on pins 5 through 9. So let me see if I can get this closer towards the screen. Let's see, pin 1, 2, 3. Well, this one's a little dirty, so I'm just going to clean this up real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, there's pin 5. Here's our diode. These things are actually called solder cups because they're just little cups that hold solder. Hence the word solder cup. I've already filled most of these up in a previous project with solder. And as you can see, soldering them in is relatively simple. I just can't get in a good position to show you soldering them in. There we go. That's a decent position. Remember, make sure that the orientation of your diodes are correct. If they're backwards, it won't work. So let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Pin 8. If you can't get these diodes from your local parts supply shop, you can pull them out of like a telephone, a stereo, a radio, pretty much anything. I mean, small signal diodes are literally in every piece of electronics. And the first time I actually did this, years and years and years ago, I used diodes that were actually pulled out of an old telephone. Worked just fine. Okay, those are soldered in. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to take one of these legs and we're just going to bend it across, because all of these up here have to be connected. And then we're just going to come by with our iron, heat up the last one first, because this is actually going to be the loosest pin. And then just go across with a little bit of solder, solder down all these little legs. You don't have to be super neat, just make sure it all sticks. There we go. And with the wire cutters, we're just going to trim off all the extra. Okay, that's soldered up. Now we have to go and make our connector for the actual game port. This is where a little bit of skill comes in. I'll give you some tips and I'll give you some advice, but really it's just going to be something you're going to have to work on. What you're going to want to do is take your paper clip and just jam it inside the connector. Okay? And then you trim off your extra. Okay? And then you're going to take your needle nose pliers and you're going to make something called an eyelet or an eye hole. And so you create something like that. And that is so your solder has a place to flow into, because soldering onto a slick, thin piece of metal like this is just a pain in the ass. So we need to make 5 of these. Also, another quick tip, notice how this isn't perfectly straight. This is all wiggly and not good. Cut this off, because it has to actually slide into the into the connector. You can either cut it off here or cut it off a little bit long and then just use this part for the eyelet. And that is what I'm going to do. And we need to make 5 of these. Okay, we've got 5 of them made. And if you notice, they're all different sizes. It really doesn't matter because later on they're all going to be cut down to the same size anyway. Something else I like to do, if you in our schematic, we don't need to use 2 of these pins right here. And it's going to have a significant gap from here to here inside the shell when we make the hood or the connector. And what I like to do is I like to just go and take a piece of spare craptastic paper clip and then just make a little jumper. So that way when you're actually using material to create the connector hood, it has something to support it. Okay, now we just have to start inserting all of our pins to make sure that they all go in. Okay, we've got all the pins in, and you know it looks ugly as all sin. So I'm actually going to shave this one down because it's way too long. But usually you don't have to wait till the actual end of this process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull all of these out, and then using my needle nose pliers or just my hands, I'm going to try to put a little bit of solder in each one of these little eyelets. Okay, all of them are now soldered, and we have to just solder our wires in. Now, that's usually easier said than done, especially if you're not very good with a soldering iron. Now, all of these wires have been pre-tinned to make things just a little bit easier, and that's always a good idea. Pre-tin all of your wires. Okay, I'm going to use this end, these longer end, for the printer port end, and I'm going to use these shorter ends for the little eyes, and I'm just going to go ahead, and it's kind of like threading a needle, just like so. And I'm going to do this for every single one of them. All of the wires have been soldered in now, but if you notice, there's a little bit of extra wire. Snip off this little extra wire, because when you put all these connectors, or all these pins into the connector itself, they have a high risk of being shorted out, and that's not good. Try to get as close into the actual metal as possible. Okay, and we got all of our pins, and we will just plug them into appropriate spots on the controller. Okay. Notice how we have a few relatively uneven ones. That's not a bad thing. However, like this one right here, that's like really long. Try to shave it down so they're relatively the same length. It doesn't have to be an exact science, but try to get them as close as possible. Having them uneven is actually a good thing, because then they run less of a chance of actually shorting out by kind of like moving over to the sides and shorting out. Okay, now that we have this assembled, let's go back to our other end. Now, you have to keep in mind that there is a color code here, and that there is a pin numbering. Like this, I believe, is pin 1 right here. Then this would be pin 2, pin 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So these have corresponding pins. And these wires are attached to those pins, and you have to know what's going where. You can't just slap anything anywhere figuring, oh, I know what I'm doing. So I'm going to go and solder, according to the schematic that's provided, I'm going to solder these to the appropriate place on the printer port connector. So here we go with that one. As you can see, everything's soldered in over here, and everything's all hooked up over here. Now what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to try to verify that all of this works before piecing together a hood for here, and the hood on here just screws on. So I'm going to go over on the software side off camera, make sure that this all works before going on to the next step.
There's a lot of great free software out there that you can use to actually be the drivers for the hardware that you just built. Now, a lot of these interfaces, the hardware is relatively identical, but there are key differences in the drivers themselves. Some of the drivers that you can use is PSXPad, DirectPad Pro, SNES Pad, SNES Key, and NT-Pad. Now, although some of these names imply that they're for Super Nintendo only, they're not. They actually do almost every single classic console. Now, NT-Pad is really good if you're running Windows XP and NT4 and 2000, but it has a tendency of actually crashing my computer. I don't know, it could just be me. PSXPad is really great. That's the one I'll be showing you in a few moments. PSXPad is great. It's really simple to install. However, the instructions to build a lot of the interfaces are not in English, they're in Spanish. So the instructions are very simple, and even despite it being in non-English, it's really easy to construct. It's very easy to understand. And DirectPad Pro is great if you have like a Win32, like Windows 95, Windows 98. It'll work on Windows XP, but it's mostly for the older Windows operating systems. SNES Pad and SNES Key are mostly for the DOS age. I'm assuming that if you're into Linux, you really don't give a crap for getting a console controller on your computer, but don't fret, there is software out there. Peg us on the forums or check us out on IRC and we'll try to help you out. Anyway, I've already installed PSXPad, but I'm going to run through an installation anyway. It's really straightforward. Okay, we want to install a Super Nintendo controller, standard, one controller. Of course, it's going to give me a bitch and moan about the addresses because they're in use already, because it's already installed, and it's going to complain about unsigned drivers. And yes, you want to continue anyway installing this game port. Now, the one thing I like about this is a lot of laptops, I don't know if any, they don't have game ports, and this is what I use on all of my laptops as a game controller. So we go ahead to our control panel, which we already have open, and I just noticed. Anyway, we go to our PSXPad properties, and we try all our axes to make sure our interface is still working. It seems like all of our buttons are working. Now, the only thing we have to do at this point is finish constructing the hood and connectors of the interface, and configuring our software to do whatever we like.
I verified that the circuit works and the controller's functional, and if you're smart enough to go and put this project together, I'm not going to have to explain how to put the parallel port hood on. But when it comes to creating the hood for the actual connector, you can use one of two things. You can use plumber's epoxy, or what they call putty epoxy, or you can use hot glue. I'll have a preview of the hot glue in a minute, but the putty epoxy comes in two compounds, just like regular epoxy. It comes in a resin and a hardener. And it works just like clay and hardens just like steel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to piece together a hood using putty epoxy. I've mixed together 2 equal parts of putty epoxy with the resin and the hardener. Now it's just like using clay. Basically, just bleb it on and work it around until you have the connector you want. Being very, very careful not to permanently epoxy this to your controller. That would be bad. At this point, if you actually want to get artistic with how it looks and be very anal retentive on get it square, round, triangle, what the hell ever, this is up to you. I'm not going to give you an in-detail explanation of how to use plumber's epoxy or putty epoxy. The instructions are right on the packaging of whatever brand you get, and if you can use Play-Doh or clay, you can use this stuff. You have about 5 minutes until it actually hardens. It actually starts to harden. The only thing I'd recommend to use, like you probably saw me doing with this thing, is use it to make like a slice around your connector so it doesn't grip onto the actual connection itself, like onto the hood of the Super Nintendo controller. At this point, I'm just going to wait 5 minutes and wait till it starts to harden a bit more before working it at all. Now, as for making the connector, make sure all your pins aren't connecting. And what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to make a small little like bridge clip, if possible, just to fill in this gap over here, because the hot glue is not going to, it's just going to kind of sink underneath that. And you know what? Saggy tips might look good on your grandma, but saggy connections don't look good on electronics. So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to get liberal with the hot glue. Now, I have to warn you, this hot glue sucks. It's like the cheapest stuff I could find. I'm not a hot glue person. So, we're just going to smear this crap on here. And we're going to let it sit. Okay, this has been sitting for about a minute and a half, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to flip it over, because if you notice it's starting to kind of blob down the other way, and now we're going to cover the other end. Keeping in mind, if you use putty epoxy, this works a lot easier. It's so much easier to manage, and I would highly recommend it over hot glue. But you work with what you got. Don't use Play-Doh. Play-Doh does not work. If you want smooth edges, what you should do is go and get a small flat piece of metal or plastic, something that's smooth and non-porous, and you basically just smush it in between. Here, I got a thin flat metal plate. I'm just going to put it underneath and press into it a little bit, just to kind of flatten it out and get all the saggy pieces to stop sagging a bit. Then I'm going to do the same thing for the top. If you notice, as soon as you apply that, like the hot glue is still soft and pliable right now, so it would be a great time to actually sit there and try to mold it a little bit. But still, this is not the finished connector. The finished connector is going to be way, 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 way bigger than this. But it's hard to do because we have no supports on the side to build on. So just keep taking your hot glue and building up until you have a connector that you're happy with. You know, this is more of an art, and it takes a little bit of skill to do. But once you get the hang of it, you'll actually be able to build, you know, custom connectors and, you know, whatever the hell else with a hot glue gun with no problem. Like, really, this is a no-brainer. Doesn't require too much skill, just takes a lot of hot glue. Now, you could just cut your controller's cable and directly solder the controller directly into the printer port, but I think that's sacrilege. You really shouldn't destroy one of those old classic console controllers just to get it working on your computer. No, forgot to trim these sons of bitches off. Here we have the finished product. Over here we have the hot glue version. Over here we have the epoxy version. Both do the same thing in the long run. As you can see, it really doesn't take much to just have a printer port connector, a couple of everyday diodes, some wire, household stuff, and interface one of your console controllers to your computer's printer port. There's also available for PlayStation 2, PlayStation 1, Xbox, GameCube. There's a whole bunch of stuff, but a lot of people actually just have a standard console controller laying around. Now you can use it on your computer. So if you decide to do this and you need any help, go to the show notes or peg us on the forums or on IRC. Have fun and good luck.
In this segment, I'm going to be explaining the basics of Internet Relay Chat. I feel it is important to explain IRC because it's the most basic form of communication over the Internet. IRC is real-time, long-range communication, like the telegraph was back in the early 1800s. IRC uses packets of binary code, which is similar to the Morse code that was used in the telegraph. To this day, Morse code is still used as the backbone of most emergency communication systems. I feel IRC will continue to be the primary source of communication over the Internet for years to come.
IRC, as we know it today, was born during summer 1988. A guy named Jarkko wrote the first IRC server and client while at the University of Oulu in Finland. IRC was created when he was trying to write a chat interface for his BBS. After running his program for a while, he realized that it had outgrown his small BBS. Soon he connected with other networks. In November 1988, IRC had spread across the Internet. In the middle of 1989, there were some 40 servers worldwide. In July 1990, IRC averaged at 12 users on 38 servers. February 15, 1993, Undernet was formed. Undernet was the first network to implement a way to register channels. Before Transurf, you had to have a bot idle in a channel, and if that bot and all the operators were flooded offline, even for a second, the channel could be taken over. During the summer of 1994, Dialup.ep was formed. That's when I really started getting into IRC. Dialup.ep had some great new features that lured a lot of users over. For example, users could own nicknames, channels, send memos, and more. From my experience at the time, Dialup.ep seemed to be the friendliest network. If you were a complete noob, people would take the time to show you the ropes. For a long time, people were there just to hang out and chat with friends. It didn't take long for Dialup.ep to become the biggest network out. Being the biggest draws a lot of attention and not always positive attention. Sometime between late 2001 and early 2002, Dialup.ep faced a major DDoS attack. It had been rumored that these attacks were caused by the entertainment industry, but has never been proven. Maybe it's just a coincidence that in February of 2003, Dialup.ep announces no more file trading, and magically the DDoS attack stopped. Once again, evolution moves on. Dialup.ep falls from its throne, and many other smaller networks pop up to quickly take its place. Since the fall of the bigger networks, IRC clients have become designed to connect to many networks at once. Today, the average user ID is connected to 3 or more networks on a regular basis. To connect to an IRC server, you need a client. There are many clients out there to choose from. Some of the factors to consider when deciding on a client will be your operating system, how powerful your PC is, and whether you want to be able to customize your client and add scripts. Some common clients for Windows are MIRC, WIRC, DIRC, and LeafChat. Mac users can use IRCLE, Mac IRC, and Shadow IRC. For Unix, I suggest BitchX, XChat, and Epic. If you have a Palm, you may wish to try Palm MIRC or UPIRC. Ignore the pussy, they're just here for the action. There are way too many clients to list here. Check out our show notes for a more complete list. MIRC is the most commonly used client, so we will be explaining it today.
Okay, now I'm going to explain MIRC. Open up MIRC, and it should start with the options screen. It will ask you for your full name and email address. Don't enter your real information. IRC isn't exactly a safe place. Type in anything in the username, and for the email address, type in something like name@isp.com. For example, mine is techsupport@myisp.com. Now type in a primary nick and an alternative. The second nick is in case your nick is used or you have an active ghost. A ghost session is one that is not actually connected, but which the IRC server believes is still online for one reason or another. Typically, this happens when your computer crashes or your internet or modem connection goes down while you're on IRC. Now, if you want, check the box for invisible mode. When not set to invisible, a fellow user can locate you through the /who, or through the /names channel command. Most of the time it's a good idea to stay invisible. You're watching Bastard Sons of Dialup, so most likely you want to connect to our IRC network. So now you need to enter us into your network list. Click the button that says Add. The description will be BSoD. The server will be irc.bsodIrc.org. The port normally will be 6667, but if you plan on using SSL, use port 6697. Type in BSoD for the group and leave the password blank. Most networks don't use it. Now select BSoD from the network list. Select the Options tab. Now check Connect on Startup, Reconnect on Disconnect, and uncheck Pop-up Connect dialog. If you would like MIRC to automatically do anything on startup, click the Perform tab. Click Add and select the network you want to perform these commands on. Check the box that says Enable Perform on Connect. Now in the Perform Commands box, you can type in any commands you would want to do automatically on Connect. You can have it automatically try to reclaim your NIC. You can also have it try to auto-identify to your NIC for you to NIC serve. There's more secure ways of doing this, but I'm not going to be explaining scripting right now. So this is just a simple example of how to do it. If you have a router and you're interested in sending files over MIRC, you're going to need to forward your DCC ports. So click the Advanced button, check the box that says DCC, select the port range. By default, it says 1024 to 5000. This is way too broad. There's no need for that many ports to be open. So change it to something like port 5000 to 5010. That will allow you 10 DCC connections at a time, and that's plenty. Now you need to know what IP to forward your DCC ports to. There's a big difference between local and external IP, which will be explained in another segment. But today we need your local IP. So click Start, then Run, and type in CMD. This should bring up the command prompt, and type in ipconfig in there. ipconfig should show you your local IP. Now you know where to forward your ports to. Your local IP is how the router knows exactly where your PC is sitting on the network. Remember that IP and close the command box. Now go to your router and forward ports 5000 to 5010 or whatever port you decide to use to your local IP. If you need help with port forwarding, check out portforward.com. There's a lot of other options you can set up when setting up MIRC, but I think I covered everything you need to get online today. Go.
Now we're going to list all the IRC commands.